All right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the wait. This is meeting number 30 of the Planning and Housing Committee. First, we acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory, the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. May I get a roll call, please?
Councillor Brockington. Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor Dudas. I'm here. Councillor Johnson. Here. Councillor Kavanagh. Present. Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kitts. Here. Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Gower.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kelly. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 4.1 to 4.4 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment to submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on July 10th, 2024. Please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest? None. Are the minutes of our meeting number 29 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Okay. I'll just run through the agenda. I think we are holding most of these items. Just because of delegations, the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw at 265 Catherine, we have a presentation as well as delegation on that item. At 10 Empress North, this is the rezoning application at 10 Empress Avenue North. We weren't anticipating a presentation. There are no delegations. We did receive some correspondence. Did members want that item held? Simran Soor at Novatech, if committee is prepared to carry this item, are you still wishing to speak? Councillor Troster has her hands up. Is that a quick comment, Councillor Troster?
Yeah, it's just a quick comment to say that this redevelopment is actually for the Dell Housing Nonprofit Co-op. Their building has reached the end of life and they're doing a rebuild, and it's very exciting because they'll also be increasing their capacity. So I just wanted to let folks know, but I have no concerns with the report or with the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Thanks to staff who worked on this. Is that item carried? Thank you. The official plan and bylaw amendment at 3030 St. Joseph Boulevard. We have delegations, a presentation. We'll hold that item. The zoning amendment and OPA at 70 and 80 Woodridge. We have public delegations as well as a presentation. The demolition control bylaw amendment, we received a bit of a flurry of community correspondence over the last 24 hours. I've asked staff whether they would have any concerns with our deferring this item. Mr. Moody, are staff concerned if this item is deferred?
No concerns, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, do you have a motion you want to make?
Thank you, Chair. Be it resolved that item 4.5 on Planning and Housing Committee Agenda 30 entitled Demolition Control Bylaw Amendment be deferred to the September 5, 2024 PHC meeting.
Councillor Tierney.
Just very quick, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff. Just to confirm in public record, because there's been a flurry of emails, will this add to any construction timelines by the deferral of this demolition bylaw? I'm just looking for staff to say it on record.
Chair, it would be maintaining status quo until such time as it's reviewed.
Okay, and I know industry in general is always concerned because, of course, there's bank contingencies and things that are tied to the ability for final permitting, and you're saying that this will not affect any of that whatsoever?
No, Chair.
Great. Anything we can do to help streamline the process, Mr. Chair, I appreciate, so thank you for that.
Councillor Curry.
Just a quick comment. One of the emails today indicated that if councillors were looking for a more fulsome review, like you've had a number of comments come in and people are wondering and maybe not sure even what this is about yet today, you need more time. staff are saying if you want to do a more fulsome review, they're not sure if they have the resources at this time. Right? That was what I read in the email just now. So would it not be, and I know you want to just defer it, but is it then in September, you're going to ask for a more fulsome review because, oh, you're not?
No, the intent is just to deal with the report recommendations as they're presented to committee at the first meeting in September. I just want to hear a little bit more about what the community's concerns are. There wasn't an official community consultation on this one. So I just want to hear from the community and Aaron and get some folks in a room and just make sure that we're going down the path of not exacerbating an alarming situation in some neighborhoods of demolition control being waived and leading to vacant properties that sit for years. So what are we, approximately 8-week delay over the summer? I'm not aware of any applications in the queue that are currently affected by this. And we do have the option, of course, to continue to bring those walk-on motions that councillors do around demolition controls. So just given that most of those who are writing to us or written to me anyways, I'm not fully understanding their concerns. I think there are red flags in there. So I just want to talk to them over a few weeks and find out exactly what's going on.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for explaining all that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the deferral carried? Thank you. And we have a joint presentation for items 4.6 and 4.7 on the ADR and the new 2022 draft, what are we calling it? Baseline report. So we'll go back to the top of the agenda for held items, the first of which is the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment at 265 Catherine Street. Mr. Bernier, I think you'll take us through that.
Good morning, Chair, members of committee. Just wanted to acknowledge that John Bernier was the file lead on this application for the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 265 Catherine. He did a great job on the file, but unfortunately he was pulled away today for an OLT hearing. So JC will be stepping in for the staff presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So as mentioned, today's presentation is about the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 265 Catherine Street. Next slide, please. The subject property is located north of Highway 17 on the southern edge of the Centertown community. Next slide, please. Most will know this as the site of the former Greyhound bus depot, which has been demolished. Property occupies the entirety of the block with frontage on Catherine Street, Line Street, Arlington Avenue, and Kent Street. The total area of the site is approximately 10,300 square meters. Next slide, please. The property is located within the downtown core transect policy area within our official plan, is designated minor corridor, and is further affected by the evolving neighborhood overlay. The downtown core transect includes highly urban areas suitable for intensification. Next slide, please. Property is also located within the central and east downtown secondary plan. The site's designated corridor, an area that's meant to retain employment uses while encouraging infill and high-rise developments. The secondary plan considers the latter as an opportunity to provide a buffer between the Queensway and the established communities to the north. Next slide, please. Schedule C of the same secondary plan identifies the site as having a maximum height of 25 stories on its southern half and 9 stories on its northern half. Next slide. And this is Schedule E of the secondary plan, which identifies the location of parks and priority streetscapes improvement. And you'll notice that Catherine Street is identified as such a priority streetscape improvement area. Next slide. The existing zoning is general mixed use with a site-specific exception and a height schedule. It was approved in 2011. It allows mixed-use developments for 2 25-story towers on the southern half of the site and a 6-story bar building along the north edge. Next slide. This is Schedule 271. It identifies the permitted heights, setbacks, and identifies that 25% of the land is to be designated as a publicly accessible open space, or what we might otherwise consider a POPS or privately owned public space. Next slide. Now on to the proposed official plan amendment. First is a reduced POPs requirement from 25 to 15%, with the understanding that there is also a new park being added to the site, which will be occupying 10% of the area. Next is the permission of 3 high-rise towers at heights of 32, 34, and 36 stories. The OPA also seeks to redesignate the northeast corner of the site from corridor to park. It also seeks to lower the height limit of the northern half of the site from 9 down to 6 stories, and to designate the northeast corner as unspecified height to reflect the park. And lastly, in Schedule E, Greening Centertown, there's a proposal to include a new park titled Arlington and Ken Park. Next slide, please. Proposed zoning bylaw amendments. You'll see the location of the 3 towers in areas H, I, and G. Otherwise, there are heights ranging from 1 stories to 6 stories in strategic locations in order to allow for appropriate transition down to the neighborhoods to the north. And also note that the POPs, the privately owned public spaces, are identified throughout the site in the hatched areas. Next slide. The proposed zoning amendments include removing the provisions which are related to the previous uses that are no longer required. There also increases in bike parking from half a space to 1 space per unit, although it is noted that the site does include more parking than a 1-to-1 ratio, but a 1-to-1 ratio is secured through rezoning. There's also a request to reduce resident vehicular parking from 0.5 down to 0.2 spaces per unit. And here I'll note that the visitor parking spaces requirement is maintained. There's a provision to allow an enclosed rooftop amenity area as a permitted projection above the height limit. An adjustment to setback requirements for the townhouse units that will be fronting on Arlington. And generally, maintenance of provisions that are related to projections, active entrances, glazing requirements that are already part of this zoning exception. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan consisting of 2 phases of development. You'll notice the park at the northeast corner or top right in the picture. 3 towers in the darker gray along Catherine. The low to mid-rise areas along Arlington. And further than that, I'll let the applicant kind of dive into details on that and walk you through it. So next slide, please. And this is a breakdown of the types of units, and you'll notice the generous amount of 3-room units as well as 2+ den. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting slide that shows the porosity of the site and the anticipated pedestrian circulation routes within the site. So again, yeah, throughout the site, in and around the park. And it's also important to note that part of the proposal includes publicly accessible washrooms in proximity to the park. Next slide, please. And we're on to brief, or I'll just run through the views. So this is a view looking northeast from Catherine and Lyon, and note the rhythm created by the differences in materials along the podium, along Catherine Street. Next slide. The view looking northwest from Catherine and Kent. Next slide. This is a view of the proposed park space, and we see the retail spaces potentially fronting on the park. On the right side of the image, you can also see the proposed townhouse units. And next slide. Just a close-up view of those retail spaces that would be abutting the park. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JC. We'll have a chance to ask questions to staff after hearing from delegations and the applicant. Sorry, to the applicant, did you want to go after the public delegation, or would you prefer to make a presentation now? Okay, come on up. I'm experiencing. Mr. Moser, Mr. Rivard, welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is John Moser with the GBA Group, and I'm joined by Jean-Luc Rivard of Brazil, the owners and developers of 265 Catherine Street. We are here in support of your staff's recommendations and respectfully request the committee to the approval of our application. Brazil acquired the former bus depot site in 2021. Aware of the existing approvals for a mixed-use high-rise residential project that was granted in 2011. Recognizing the unique opportunity to develop an entire block of land in a 2020s urban context, Brazil understood the responsibility to engage in a comprehensive review process. This including early and frequent consultation with the ward councillor, city staff, the Centertown Community Association, and local residents. The journey began in 2021 with a series of 4 workshops, which the project evolved with each stage of the workshops. Participants raised concerns primarily about height, density, the Arlington frontage, and affordable housing was certainly that was spoken about at the various visioning workshops. As a site plan and urban design concept was, I guess, took shape, the project went in front of the Urban Design Review Panel on 3 occasions. And as your staff report speaks to, at the final meeting, the panel had provided guidance on tower heights, on podium design, material choices, and the relationship between the build form and the proposed park. The overall project in front of you today does exceed the current 2011 zoning. The numbers of units has increased by approximately 350. The building heights have risen from the 19 to 25 story range to the 32 to 36 storage range. Brazil acknowledges that with increased density comes a need for exceptional design and the community benefits beyond additional housing units. The following features are made possible by the site being very large and the project's evolution, incorporating valuable elements identified by the participants as we went through this now 2.5, 3-year process. So there's a 10% affordable units will be integrated into the project as part of the CMHC financing program. Projects meeting the 25% minimum open space requirement with 10% of the site allocated as a public part that will be dedicated to the city and not built over the parking, underground parking, but that will certainly allow trees to grow on the site. And a further 15% was by creating a walking pass-through space, sort of the porosity point that the staff had raised with you. Again, the height along Arlington Avenue frontage was reduced in terms of to be able to have a good interface and transition with the properties to the north. There's a 4,000 square foot flexible indoor market space for community use, such as the farmers markets, art shows and events. And that was the area that was shown on, I think, the last slide that was produced by staff. There's at-grade retail spaces will be focused on local and small businesses. Public washrooms were added to the project. Certainly that was raised by a number of participations. There's going to be dedicated art spaces, exhibit spaces on the site. And as was noted, there's going to be more than one bicycle space for the residents. And the focus really on access to the site will be, there'll be 360 parking spaces. But with these two last features really speak to the project as being a part of a 15-minute neighborhood. The staff report basically speaks to this being achieving a score of 9 out of 9 in terms of a 15-minute maximum site. So very important.
John, your 5 minutes are up. Do you have a concluding thought?
Just, Chair, the site plan application is nearing completion, and once approved, she'll start construction of phase 1 this fall. And a thank you to Councillor Trosser and her staff for participating. Also to the former Councillor McKinney. She had started this process with us. Thank you to staff for their excellent work. And we'd be certainly remiss if not thanking the local residents, the community associations from working with us for the last number of years. And we'd be pleased to answer any questions committee has, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moser. I'm not sure if Catherine is listening to planning committee anymore, but we will pass that on for sure. I bet they are.
No, they aren't. They definitely aren't.
Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Trosser.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much to the proponents team and to city staff for that presentation. I do have a number of questions. The first one is, could you, I know that you engage in a long process with the community, and this is a significant amount of density on a site that has been empty for a very long time, and before that just had a bus station. So I want to acknowledge that this is 1,000 to 2,000 people moving in across the street in an otherwise low-rise neighborhood. So this is a significant amount of change. I'm wondering if you could just speak to some of the changes that you made to the development thanks to consultation with the community. In other words, how is the community voice reflected in the final design?
I'll start, Chair, and Mr. Rivard can join in. Certainly, a lot of the elements that I mentioned were as a result of the public participation in terms of the affordable housing. The park was certainly something that the community welcomed. In the previous application, there was no public park. There was just an area to be able to prosody through the site. The building heights along Arlington, as I had mentioned, the zoning had regional zoning, or the zoning in place now, allowed 9 stories along that frontage, and Brazil certainly agreed with reducing that in terms of some townhouses along Arlington, and rather than a 9-story building, creating a 6-story building with the, if you will, market space and, community space on the ground floor of that. Tied with that, and again, it's something that rarely sees, is commitment for public washrooms. That was a result of the discussions with the community. The bike parking, again, was something that going in, Brazil had felt they provided the minimum, and with the discussions with the community, it was felt that could do better than that, and went to the 1-for-1 for bicycle parking. And I guess the other, and a lot of discussion on was the amount of parking that was going to put into the project. And basically, you know, the project is providing half the requirement for the zoning by recognizing that this isn't a automobile driven project. This is a project that basically wants to fit into a 15-minute neighborhood. And I guess finally, and although weren't encouraged to do this, certainly the project does look to the secondary plan when it speaks of landscaping along the frontage of Catherine, and also very good landscaping along Arlington Avenue.
Thank you very much. Now, the existing zoning allowed for 3 25-story towers. I'm just wondering what motivated you to go higher. This is a question I'm getting from the community, because 19 to 25 is already pretty high, and it will be the highest thing in the neighborhood. 32 will be much higher than anything in the neighborhood. So I'm just curious about why you pursued higher buildings.
Well, I'll start
I could, good morning, Chair and members of the committee. We're also providing almost 30,000 square feet of retail and commercial space that wasn't provided before. So that's something that's, I know the community needed some of those, there's a future, maybe grocery store coming, pharmacy, mom and pop shops. So those are things that we've also added to our proposal.
Okay, so the additional height is to compensate for the amenities at ground level.
Exactly.
Okay. Now I understand you want to provide 10% affordable units, which was not part of the plan, and that's something I applaud, and it's definitely a community demand. And I understand you want to take advantage of rental construction financing from the federal government. Have you thought about what level of affordability you're planning to offer, or have you thought about partnering with a nonprofit housing provider for those affordable units?
Yes. So in terms of the CHMC financing program, the affordable units need to be at the maximum price of $1,550 per month. That's the maximum. That's the program. In terms of other programs, I know your office sent us some information concerning the CIP program that's, and we're currently evaluating that as we speak.
That's great. If you can use the CIP to offer deeper affordability, I would certainly encourage you to do so. And just in terms of the affordable units, have you decided what mix of 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed you might consider in the affordable component?
I think it's going to be a mix. We haven't decided exactly which units, but it's going to be a mixed use. That's the intention.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for me now.
Thank you, Councillor Trustor. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Moser. Good to see you again. I just want to quickly acknowledge my experience with Brazil in particular, which has always been positive. My experience and what I see replicated here on this file is that they take the time to listen, to work with stakeholders, and modifications are made over time. And I think that's the way it should be. And I just want to publicly acknowledge that again, Brazil has done what they need to do to present something that maybe isn't accepted by 100% of the people, but has been refined over time to be sort of the best fit for this site. So I want to acknowledge that. I don't have an issue with the height. What we heard over and over again during the OP process is if you could put height on the periphery of a community and try and protect the integrity, that, at least in my community, was the way to go. There are countless examples, particularly abutting the Queensway, where we've recently approved very high developments. I have no issue with height at this location. My one question is regarding the park. Will the park be a privately owned and maintained or publicly owned and maintained? And what factors contribute to that decision in particular, whether it becomes a public or private green space?
During the, or Chair, during the process, one of the requirements that pre-consultation was 10% of the site be a park. The community certainly is, needs more park space. So the decision was made that it would, Brazil agreed to the 10%. It would be, lands would be conveyed to the city as a public park. There'll be a process undertaken with the Parks Department, along with the counselor and the community, on what elements are going to be in the park. And so for all intents and purposes, it's going to be a city park.
Okay, I have no issue with there being a park. There needs to be green space here, but it was the city that told you that this needs to become a public park?
Yes, and we had no quarrel with that.
Fair enough. Of course not. Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Troster has a follow-up.
Thank you so much. Just one more question. I just wanted to touch on transportation infrastructure, because you have a very, very low percentage of parking, which is something I applaud downtown. But even though this site certainly is within a 15-minute neighborhood, it's not anywhere close to LRT. So I'm just wondering if you could comment on the surrounding transportation infrastructure and whether you think it's sufficient to support a development of this nature.
As part of the, if you will, the submission package, there was detailed transportation impact studies done by consultant, and they analyzed the availability of transit, which there is transit in front of the site. Then talked about the active transportation connections with the facilities on O'Connor, and that gets you into everywhere in the community from bike, gain us a walkable community. So certainly the intention is to avail all of the residents with the different types of transit. There is, I think, a longer range plan for doing a BRT type transit along the Catherine Street. So all of those things put together basically felt that from a marketing point of view, Brazil wasn't looking at this to be an auto-driven project, but basically a people that have a lifestyle that you can walk 15 minutes to the LRT from this site as well. So
yeah, more like half an hour, but okay. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm just telegraphing because I'll talk about Kent Street anytime I can. This is bringing 2,000 people to Kent Street, a street that's like a 4-lane highway through Centertown with no active transportation infrastructure. And there's also no active transportation infrastructure on Bank Street. So again, this is sort of the urban version of the conundrum that Councillor Kitts often brings to committee, which is, this chicken before the egg thing. Like we have, this is a massive neighborhood changing development, bringing 2,000 people to a specific corner with a 0.2 per person parking ratio, with the intention that people will use active transportation. And the north-south roads that are surrounding the site are extremely dangerous for cyclists. So I do think as we do Transportation Master Plan Part 2, which is not something that this committee deals with, I will be looking for cycling infrastructure on Kent Street, because this is not the only large development coming to Kent. It's an arterial road, but there's a lot of people who live there and who are going to be living there. So I know that's beyond the scope of the delegates' presentation, but I do think it's something really important to take into account, because we cannot have bike and transit oriented development without bike and transit oriented infrastructure. So thank you so much.
Point well taken, Councillor Troster. Just a quick question for Ms. Chi. Reference was made to BRT on Catherine, raised a few eyebrows. Can you just clarify?
Chair, there is no BRT planned on Catherine. However, we will look to see if there are opportunities to improve transit along that corridor with spot locations to give transit priority for the routes that go through there.
World's shortest BRT, 45 second service. Yeah, so no BRT on Catherine. Are there any other questions for the delegation? No.
Could I just add that in terms of parking, we're also going to be providing some car sharing, some vehicles that will be able to be used by the residents. So we're planning on providing maybe 5 to 10 vehicles for that in the parking garage.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for the presentation today, and we'll move on to our first public delegation or only public delegation. And I see, Mary, you are online. So Ms. Wang, please, you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Hi, Chair Leeper and councillors. My name is Mary Wong. I'm the president of Centertown Community Association. I'm also a resident at Arlington and Lyon, kitty corner from the development in a CCOC building, a market rent unit at the CCOC building, essentially kitty corner from it. I'm speaking today both as the CCA president as well as the residents, and I was involved in the 4 sessions back in 2021, summer 2021. That was only about a dozen people invited by the Councillor McKinney at the time from the community. And the first session, they were only talking about 25-story. And at the last session, they talked about wanting additional density. Knowing that they probably would ask for additional density, I in the first session, I asked about affordable units. They said, depends on what programs are available. I asked about what their accessibility plan is. They said 15% Ontario Building Code, which is a lagging indicator considering Centertown has the second highest senior population and will be 25% over seniors by 2025. I think we should have a higher percentage. And also I asked about family size unit. They say they don't know the mix yet. When the plan came out last year, there was one consultation facilitated by Councillor Troster, which the community participated in, including CCA. And they unveiled 50 units of 3 bedrooms out of a planned 1,000 units, which is 5%, right next to a school. And I did comment that I had really hoped they will have a higher percentage of 3-bedroom family size units. And the CCOC building I'm living in has 8 3-bedrooms and 8 2-bedrooms, and half of the 3 bedrooms at one point were occupied by students, but it's gradually shifting to families. But I see in this version, they actually went down to 49 units with a higher unit count. So that's roughly 4.5% of family size 3-bedroom, which I truly think is very, very low. And they forgot to mention that was also a repeated request, both accessibility as well as family size unit having repeated requests from CCA letters dating back July 2023, as well as October 2023, as well as the letter that was submitted yesterday. The park space, well, we are very glad they're not building underground garage under the park, so that can allow mature tree. The pop actually shrunk quite a lot from the initial discussion. And I don't know, the walkways at one point was undercover, whether that's still the case. It's not. A lot of it, of the so-called park space, I think are actually transit walking space. So this is not as much green space as we hope for close to 2,000 people, to be honest. While we're glad that they actually increased the bike parking to the 1-to-1 ratio that we recommended, it is not yet a 15-minute neighborhood. I know with Bank Street, a lot of time the bus is 6 and 7. Occasionally, I have walked or taken the bus down to the Glebe Center where mom resides. And when there's an event on, it's chock-a-block. I can walk faster than I can drive, but the thing is also there isn't the biking infrastructure, as Councillor Troster mentioned. And but one thing I'm really concerned about, or their original vision from last year saw the building closest to Flasham at 25-story, and now they're going to 30-story, potentially shadowing the school and play yard.
Ms.
That's
Wong, you're out of time. I don't know if council
That's
member
it.
may wish to ask you a question with respect to that last point, or
So I'm open to any
Okay.
questions.
and I don't see any questions. Oh, there we go.
Well,
Councillor
it's me.
Foster.
Hi, Mary. I just wanted to thank you for being here, and I'm glad you didn't get stuck in an elevator again this time. And I
That was fun.
I know.
The security staff was quite good yesterday. They were keeping me informed. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank you and the Centertown Community Association. I think I'm really excited to update our zoning, because I remember during our community consultation, one of the main issues that came up was like, we worked really hard on this secondary plan, and right away there's this application that's contradicting our secondary plan. And I want to acknowledge all of the work that went into that secondary plan. And I don't think that this development is perfect, but I think the frontage along Arlington is a huge victory for the community, where you really asked for that townhouse look and feel to be close to similar to what's across the street. I think having a public bathroom is going to be transformative for the neighborhood, and that wouldn't be there without the community's involvement. And I agree with you. We have another development going in at Albert and Lyon, but the park is above a parking garage, so it will not be able to have the same mature trees. So I just want to thank you for continuing to raise these issues. And your point about larger apartment size or family size apartments, I'm beating that drum constantly. And it's very interesting that you mentioned the ratio in your own CCOC building, because the ones who are really doing the heavy lifting on family size apartments in Centertown are the nonprofit housing developers. And I was very happy yesterday at Finance Committee to see the proposal pass to exempt nonprofit housing developers like your own landlord, CCOC, from property taxes. So hopefully that'll allow them to invest in larger units. So thank you so much, Mary. Your points are well taken, and I'm just really happy to see the community's voice really impact the final design that we're seeing here today, because there has been a tremendous amount of change. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Thank you very much, Mary. I don't see any other questions, so we will move on to questions of staff. Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pursue with staff my question about the park. Can staff just let me know what criteria is used to suggest that the green space or park, and this is general, not just necessarily to this development, be retained privately owned and maintained, versus your recommendation for green space to be turned over for public use and city owned and maintained? What factors contribute to that recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. So regarding parkland dedication, we do have in the new OP, the land first policy. So our first opportunity is to look at, is the size of the property suitable to achieve a park that the city would own. The general threshold is a park in city hands, and ownership has to be a minimum 400 square meters. And based on the size of this property in question, the park we're getting is actually close to 1,000 square meters. So quite a bit larger than our minimum standard. And then the 10% comes from the Planning Act, where they have the authority to have parkland dedicated to the city, where we have that opportunity to take land, and it maxes out at that 10% based on the size of the property. So in this case, we are taking that land in this case versus cash in lieu, which you typically see on other applications, but albeit on smaller sites. So there is interest to have this dedicated as parkland. owned, maintained, and operated by the city. And we've been working very closely with our park colleagues to make sure that the development that's surrounding that park also has a synergy and has buildings offset from it so that they're not right on top of it, incurring things like limiting distance agreements and that sort of thing. So there's been a lot of good communication, both about the design of the park itself and then how it relates to the abutting development.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So the default position, as long as the amount of green space meets various checks, is for it to become a public park or green space owned and maintained by the city.
That's correct.
And then how do we budget for amenities in the park? We have developments now that are yielding public parks. We're creating parks, I think, at a speed I've never seen before. How is the public, what are public expectations that once these developments are built, these green spaces have amenities in them, they're built, they meet expectations, but all of that is very expensive. So how is this being budgeted for?
To be honest, Chair, I don't have the answer to that at this point in the process. We have an active zoning, official plan, and site plan applications. Procedurally, it's the site plan application that will ultimately have the condition that will convey the parkland to the city. Park staff would identify that through our application as saying, yes, this is a property and application where we want to take that land. Then it would go through its own separate process where Parks will do its own consultation for the design of that specific land. And the budget piece, I'm not entirely sure, so I don't want to make an educated assumption on this one.
Is our default position, so if you've clarified for me, our default position is we want to retain the park in public hands, but it also becomes our expense going forward to maintain and operate that site. So if the site plan is silent on how those amenities are going to be financed, I just want to make sure whether that's the default position, meaning there isn't any wording that requires the developer to pay the amenities. When the city bought Canoe Bay, the lands from the old Bayview Public School on Riverside Drive, I think this was a unique case because when the city sold those lands to that developer, part of the sales agreement was there's going to be a 1.5 acre park, but you have to pay for the amenities. $900,000 was set aside. They're going to pay when the development goes forward to build that park. But in these cases, as developments are approved all over the city, and we are now acquiring new public parks, taxpayers now have to pay to build them. And so I'm just clarifying whether our default position is silence or as part of site plans, which I think it should be, we should ask the developer to pay for this and not taxpayers. So where are we on this matter?
Mr. Chair, if I may, parks inside the green belt, the amenities on them are funded by development charges. There are developers I'm aware that go above and beyond that, but the default position for the amenities is that they are paid for by development charges inside the green belt.
That's from the general pot. So there wouldn't be any additional charge to a specific developer because they're yielding the green space to the city. That's how we get the park. But there's no additional requirement for the developer to pay for the amenities in that park. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And so what Mr. Mark is saying is if the city then needs to finance the construction of those amenities, we draw from the DC pot. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good question. I don't know if park staff are listening to that, but they may want to send Councillor Brockington a memo. Councillor Truster.
Thank you so much, Chair. And to Councillor Brockington, I just wanted to give you another salient example, which is the main and main development at the corner of Albert and Lyon, where I was mentioning there is going to be a park above a parking garage. So that led to some dispute with the city. They dedicated the land. In that case, they're building the amenities for us, but I gave $1.5 million from cash in lieu on top of the land being dedicated. Again, I'm cash in lieu rich because I have so many developments going in that don't dedicate any parkland at all. But I do think it's problematic if that's the only way that the amenities are funded when new parkland is being created by new development. So I really appreciate you asking that question, because that was going to be my own question. Because as I said, this neighborhood is taking on the burden of a massive multi-year construction project and 2,000 new people moving in across the street. It seems unfair to have to dip into my ward account to be able to pay for the amenities on the land in the park that's being dedicated. So thank you very much. I just have a question to staff, because as you well know, this massive development and construction is going to be across the street from a school that my daughter will actually be attending for the next 2 years. Super fun. So I know we've had some issues with other major developments near schools and construction noise. I'm just wondering if anyone from staff can speak to what regulations exist when it comes to noise and proximity to schools. Do we have any regulations? Are there any guardrails there to help protect the learning environment for the kids who will be learning in a very noisy environment for many years?
Thank you, Councillor. And Chair, it's an excellent question. The short answer is yes, the noise bylaw is the sort of governing bylaw that controls noise during construction activity. I just want to add to it though, that we did receive correspondence from the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, which we have been sharing with the applicant and have put them in touch to talk with each other. It's still early stages as we still have the site plan application to complete if this OPA and zoning goes forward. So we've put those two groups in conversation with each other so that they can be aware of the concerns about the timing of construction, if and when they're doing blasting, if there's any discussion about access or fencing and that sort of thing. So on our end, the default is the noise bylaw, but as part of the application process, we're definitely having a good conversation between those three parties for awareness and see if Brazil and the school board would work something out on their own.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I also wanted to note that Brazil has been very willing. We're going to do a little consultation actually with students at the school about what they want to see in the various public spaces. And the developer has been very open to doing that kind of development with the school, or consultation with the school and with young people, which I think is very important because it's going to be across the street from their school. So thank you so much. I mean, my final comments on this file are, I think we need to acknowledge that urban neighborhoods are going through a massive amount of change, tremendous density being stuffed into relatively small pieces of land. This is a huge opportunity to bring more amenities to that part of the neighborhood and to make it even more of a 15-minute community. But it's also a multi-year, really loud, really difficult construction process that these neighbors are going to have to live through. But I do want to thank the developer for being really responsive to community needs, for taking consultation seriously. I think the product we're seeing today is much, much, much better than what we started with. And this is a really cool corner of Centertown, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it develop more. But I will be back with more questions and demands about transportation infrastructure in the surrounding area, because as I said, I know this is the chicken and egg situation, but we can't sell this project to the community saying that it's going to be primarily focused on active transportation when the infrastructure surrounding the site is just not there yet. So hopefully we can grow the infrastructure as the site develops, because it will be over the course of many years. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Choster. I don't see any other questions of staff. I'm excited about this one. I think clearly one of the solutions to downtown revitalization is people. And a development like this has got the potential to create a very critical mass of people who are going to want services, they're going to want schools, they're going to shop in local stores. They're going to demand the safe infrastructure for getting around. So this is the direction in which we need to go downtown. Is this item carried? The item is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much to all the staff who worked on that one. 10 Empress North, we've already passed that one. St. Joseph Boulevard, there's an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment at 3030 St. Joseph Boulevard. We have a presentation, we have the applicants, we have delegations, we've got city councilors, we've got people in the gallery, we've got the media. All the elements of the recipe for a good discussion are in place. And it starts now. Raise your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is a zoning and official plan amendment for 3030 St. Joseph. Next slide, please. 3030 St. Joseph is located on the south side of St. Joseph Boulevard, approximately 500 meters from the new transit station, LRT station at Placer Dorleans. This site itself has some history. It was before the Planning Committee in 2020 to permit a 16-story building on this site. Prior to that, there were 2 public consultation meetings in the community that due to the amount of public concern about the site, Planning Committee and Council approved a zoning bylaw to permit the 16-story building at that time. Next slide, please. The property itself is about 2,500 square meters. It's located on the south side of St. Joseph on a wedge-shaped property between St. Joseph and Defore. This plan shows the contours on that property. There's approximately 10 meters of grade elevation change from the south or the bottom up to St. Joseph on the top. Next slide, please. Here's some photos of the site from the south looking up the hill and from the east looking up Defore. Next slide, please. This is the planning designation for the official plan. The site itself is designated as hub. It is on the south edge of the hub designation, and St. Joseph Boulevard is a main street corridor. And across the street in the Place d'Orleans, it is considered a town center designation. Next slide, please. The secondary plan was approved in February of 2023 for the site. The designation is St. Joseph Main Street. It is on the eastern terminus of that designation. Again, across the street is Station Core, which essentially goes around the planned Place d'Orleans transit station. As you can see, the property is right on the edge of the secondary plan. The lands south of the dark line are the Queenswood community. Next slide, please. Here's a concept plan. It's very similar to what we saw in 2020, roughly the same footprint. As far as they have a courtyard kind of feature at the corner. Driving or car access to the underground parking is on the west side of the property. And there is an urban treatment along St. Joseph where we have a couple of store frontages that will be aiming out on that. And they'll try and maintain the green space on the far south at the top of the hill. Next slide, please. Here's some elevations. Again, the elevations are very similar to what was seen in 2020. There is an additional 2 stories, and what generally it could be characterized as a 5-story podium with a tower coming out of it. Again, next slide. Here's some shadow studies. This is for September or the equinox dates. As you can see that on the shadow studies, there are red showing how the additional 2 stories would extend the shadow later in the day. And next slide, please. The amendments that are being proposed, the secondary plan, they wanted to clarify the language in the secondary plan because there's some ambiguity. There was a schedule that was produced that shows that this site was of a size that could handle 18 stories, which is considered to be modest high-rise buildings. However, there was also in figure 14, a area-specific notation for this site, which reflected the planning and council's decision to have a 16-story building only 2 years earlier. And so what they are proposing is to remove the area-specific policy and allow the schedule itself to determine the height of 18 stories. Next slide, please. The zoning amendment, they would keep the current AM3 zone with the exception. They would make some changes to that exception. They would remove the floor space index and the section 186. Essentially, that's just one of the provisions determining the setbacks. Those will be looked after through the schedule. Additional provisions would allow for a rooftop amenity space to project up to 4 meters in height with about 150 meters of floor area. Maximum floor space for the tower portion will be limited to 750 square meters to GFA. And section 186 3B, which is the table that determines the setbacks and heights, will be replaced by the schedule. The next slide. Here's the schedule. We would just replace this one for the previous one that was in there. Again, it's very similar in nature, showing how the podium will be stepped back from St. Joseph and provide setbacks from both the intersection at DeFore and the properties to the west. Next slide, please. The rationale for supporting this application is the proposal is consistent with the official plan and is in keeping with the goals of the new secondary plan. The proposal's design includes transitional policies and abutting to the residential and step backs and heights. It also has a streetscape design that is favorable to the main street. The landscape risk or the landslide risk was assessed again. To go back to one of the main comments during the 2020 conversation about this was that slope stability on the site is a major concern of the community. At the time, we held the application in order to do slope stability. Since then, the policy and our knowledge about regressive landslide has been improved, and when they've provided a slope stability report that was accepted by the Conservation Authority. And next slide, sorry, please. Our recommendation is that the Planning and Housing Committee recommend to the council that they permit the zoning for an 18-story mixed-use building at the site. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Steve, thank you very much for a comprehensive overview of the proposal. We're going to move straight to delegations. The applicant will be up after the members of the public who speak. So we're going to move to Guy Daquet first. Good morning, sir. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Guy Daquet. I reside at 1363 Sioux in Orleans, which is very close to the location of the proposed development of 3030 Saint Joseph. My wife, Christine, and I have been living there 35 years. We were part of the group originally led by Mr. Bob Fletcher, who raised concerns about the building of the proposed high-rise on this very tiny wedge-shaped property, as you saw in the pictures, at the entrance of the community of Queenswood Heights. It required a change in zoning originally to raise the building from raise the allowance for buildings from 8 to 12 stories. And then it was changed again to 16 stories. And now, since a year ago, The bylaw amendment seeks approval for 18 to 19 stories if you add the extra part for the HVAC and everything. Despite the fact that we raised many safety, traffic, and aesthetic related concerns, for many of us, the request to increase the building height after raising all our legitimate concerns is kind of adding insult to our injury. How will this change or improve the problems that we previously identified? These include, among others, the risk of landslide due to the unstable lead of clay on a steep escarpment. Now, we know there's an engineering report that has found the site to be acceptable for building, but it doesn't remove the fact that a serious landslide occurred there at this site in the late 60s that wiped away the road and direct access to the community for many weeks. What guarantees that such a landslide could not occur again at the same location or others along that escarpment? We saw what happened just a couple of years ago when another landslide occurred in the residential area of Orleans that forced the evacuation of several homes for many weeks. The addition of high-density housing at this site will significantly increase traffic at this already very busy and dangerous intersection. We can't see how this project will make St. Joseph Boulevard a more pedestrian-friendly space as suggested in the city's report. Questions have been raised on several occasions regarding the traffic study done prior to the pandemic in the first week of July, I forget what year now, when many had already left for vacation. Extrapolation models that were used to predict the general traffic volume at the intersection of Saint Joseph and Dufort Drive were as good as taking a guess at that time of the year. The study should have really been made in September or October, in our view. The planned parkade exit at the building is very close to the intersection, which has a red light camera in use. I see cars trigger the red light camera almost every week. Other traffic impediments have been seen with the high number of cars going in and out of the cannabis store that's located right adjacent to 3030 St. Joseph. Now, it's interesting to note that very few people actually sit on the patio at the Farm Boy store, which is located at that intersection. It's just too noisy and busy to be enjoyable. So one of the proposed ideas that may see a coffee shop or deli built on the ground floor of the proposed tower will not likely attract many patrons. The proposed tower will impede local traffic and also the block sight lines for the vehicles that are heading north down Dufort Drive towards St. Joseph, which is going to increase the danger of that intersection. Regarding parking, the building itself has a limited number of spaces for residents and visitors, and so this will impact our local parking as visitors and residents park their vehicles in the adjacent streets of Queenswood Heights. But the greatest concern, of course, has been raised with respect to the disproportionate height of the building, which is way out of character and balance and design with the rest of the residential and commercial area in a suburb of Ottawa that's almost 21 kilometers from downtown. The city's report indicates that the distance of the proposed high-rise respects the transition guideline. And we want to know who drafted this guideline and what is the criteria that deems it acceptable to build so close to low-rise residential homes. Now, we're all aware of the city's policy of housing intensification around the hubs of the new light rail system, and we're not opposed to the new building development, and we support the provision of affordable housing. However, we see a lot of other vacant or undeveloped land and properties located near the light rail line that is further away from the lowest rise residents and would be more amenable to building apartment and condo towers. The bottom line is that more distance is needed to reduce the impact on aesthetics. And no one wants to have very high buildings built adjacent to their backyards. Landowners and developers who don't live on or near the properties, or our municipal politicians who maybe don't live in the adjacent streets, may not be concerned about this, as we're focused largely on making money on investment or managing political agenda. Now, it was interesting to note that this property was flipped by the original owners after the approval was granted to build a 16-story building. The long-standing residents and taxpayers of Queenswood Heights community should not be victims of political expediency and opportunists. We should all live by the golden rule. Look at the towers that are being built at Petrie Island, which are much further away from low-rise residences. That location for high-rise buildings makes much more sense, and no one's complaining. How much more will the increased height of the tower negatively impact the prices of local homes in proximity? Having the towers rise above our properties raises important privacy concerns and can't help but impact the price of our homes. In closing, I believe that all land development needs to be respectful of the character of neighborhoods and the legitimate concerns and negative impact on the citizens that are being affected. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deke. I'm checking to see if there are any members who have any questions for you. And there are none. Thank you very much for your presentation today. JP Unger. JP, are you online?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can. Welcome back.
Great, thank you.
When you're ready, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. Burn your hands.
Sorry, just a second, please. Yes, ready, thank you. Well, first of all, good morning. I'm really not sure what to say because I'm not sure anything I say will make a difference, no matter how clear and how important. I have been a concerned and engaged citizen for more than 25 years, individually, and with the Green Space Alliance of Canada's capital, a group with great expertise and in favor of good development and healthy growth for our capital city. In my 25 plus years of carefully researched letters, submissions, and presentations, I have not seen a single time in which any of the suggestions, warnings, or recommendations presented has been taken up, not once. I don't know what difference it would make, as it also seems decisions are already made before we even have these meetings. We have seen the media releases go out announcing decisions made before there even was a vote on the matter. All these years, I've seen the easy out for approving anything by repeating the mantra that our hands are tied, first by the Ontario Municipal Board, now the Ontario Land Tribunal. More recently, the mantra of housing crisis is brandished to justify all kinds of bad decisions, from damaging irreplaceable agricultural research to building multiple high-rises on a swamp, as in the Petrie Island swamp or its floodplain, which would require 24/7 pumping of water in perpetuity to drain the parking levels. On the hands being tied, in these 25 plus years, I have not once seen the city take credible legal action to challenge the OMB or the Land Tribunal at higher courts to assert the city's land use authority. Not once. The laws that created and provided the framework for this city and the municipalities clearly gives that land use authority. The Land Tribunal does not have land use authority as such. It is an arbiter of disputes, supposedly resolves conflicts involving land use authorities and others. The land use authority is with the city, and the city chooses not to assert and confirm with higher courts its land use authority. As for housing crisis, if the city really meant what it says, we would not have $500 million of our current and future tax dollars given to the Lansdowne billionaires group to prop up their businesses. Instead, it should be using that money to build at cost thousands of affordable housing units along vacant and derelict properties around Montreal Road, Baseland, Innes, you name it. It's not happening, so please don't say housing crisis. I understand why there is a strong push for very tall high-rises. They are not about affordable housing or community improvement. They are about maximum profit and quick return on investment. Build, sell, and leave buyers to their own devices under some condominium governance. We've seen so many people put their life savings or acquire a lifetime of debt only to be hammered later with special assessments in the tens of thousands of dollars each to fix leaking pipes and ceilings, cracking foundations, and other failures from quick construction. As for this proposal before you, I already wrote to you, raising the alarm about slope stability issues. There were a number of other pretty important concerns explained there also, but slope stability. My understanding is that the slope stability study was a single developer-hired consultant report, simply reviewed by staff and accepted. How the city would consider approving a heavy building on a sliver of land where there are such concerns, without at least a truly independent and very thorough, peer-reviewed and validated study of the safety and stability of the site. To me, it's unconscionable. But back to why I'm here today. If every experience in this 25 plus years here tells me that raising a serious concern won't make a difference, because there are lives at stake here, and this intervention becomes part of the public record. I truly hope there is never a catastrophic situation there, but if there ever is, here is a warning that this does not seem to be a safe site to build a tall building. And I hope everyone who pushed or voted for the project's approval without carrying out truly thorough due diligence and exercising properly their duty of care is held accountable. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Unger. I'm sure that councillors will have questions for city staff with respect to the rigorousness of the engineering reviews. Presumably, those have been well thought through and carried out by qualified individuals. I guess what I would ask you, I don't see any questions for you. The question that is before this committee is whether or not the zoning is and official plan amendment are acceptable under the frameworks that guide planning in Ontario. And with all due respect to Mr. Deke, who just spoke with us, and to yourself, I have not heard an argument framed this morning in planning terms that would lead this committee to confidently reject the application of our staff and put our legal staff in a position of having to defend that in front of the Ontario Land Tribunal. Losing at the Ontario Land Tribunal is not, we can't just say challenge it to the next level of court. There are judicial considerations that are not ours to determine, whereby going to divisional court would rely on our demonstrating that there has been an error in law when the Ontario Land Tribunal rules. It's a very fraught path. And I'm just wondering, what are the planning grounds upon which you believe this application should be rejected in a way that this committee can feel confident making that recommendation to council so that it can feel confident should we refuse the application and that go to the tribunal?
Okay, may I answer?
Well, of course, that's a question.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of points. One, well, planning, there were already zoning limits before of height restriction and type of building for the area. And as I said, the city had its land use authority. Basically, it's changed its own rules to accommodate this. So there was obviously a planning rationale for having the previous zoning and limits, and there's a secondary plan waiting. But basically, for challenging this, I'm not saying outright reject, but at the very least, put a hold until there is an actual independent, thorough, and peer-reviewed and vetted study of stability issues. The city cannot be faulted by the Land Tribunal or any court for exercising its due diligence and its duty of care. We're talking about lives being put at risk by building there. That's not only a planning rationale, it's a basic safety and legal principle.
That is being determined under
due diligence.
Yeah, that is a determination that has to be made by properly qualified staff. It's not a political decision as to whether or not to accept an engineering.
Well, you're decision makers on this, and I've said it before. Actually, it's high time for the city to replace its legal counsel. There's been way too many decisions and questionable ones, but that's another matter. But you are the decision makers, so you decide to direct staff to require, as part of your exercising of due diligence and duty of care, that there be an independent, thorough, peer-reviewed and vetted study on land stability issues. That's as simple as that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Unger. I don't see any further questions for you, so we're going to move on to questions of staff.
Thank you.
I don't see any from members. Thank you, Councillor Gower, Vice Chair Gower.
I wanted to ask about transition, how you determined that there was an appropriate transition to the low-rise neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The transition policies are based on distance from the existing low-rise buildings to the proposed towers. The general rule of thumb is essentially a 45-degree plane that is from the property line of the low-rise going up towards the top of the tower. Due to the distance between the existing homes on the top of the hill and the elevation, this policy is met in that it falls well below the 45-degree plane. Thank you.
And I'll ask one more if I can, Chair. Besides the 45-degree angular plane, were there any other elements that provided transition?
Compared to the original proposal made back in 2017, the building has been shifted so that it is more oriented towards St. Joseph Boulevard, and it's on an angle that is parallel with St. Joseph, meaning that it's now on an angle so that there isn't a direct face of the building facing towards these homes. So the corner is the main point towards them, or the closest point. So between those two items, yes, I believe they've met the policy.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. With my apologies to the applicant team, we do have to provide an opportunity for you folks. You do have 5 minutes to either present to the committee or respond to some of what you've heard.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll just lead off. Miguel Tremblay, Foten Consultants. I'm here with Tamara, also from Foten, and she was the file lead working with Steve. We do have a presentation, but we'll jump right into it. And if there's a moment to bring it up, because we may want to rely on a couple of slides, including the public realm one, but we won't do a full presentation. I don't think we need to. Steve is very thorough in his overview. Maybe I'll just address some of the points that were raised as a result of the delegations in particular. We'll start with the landslide assessment. There's some sensitivity to landslides in Orleans. The city is very aware of that. There's ongoing reviews. This was an issue in the original application. It is an issue now that we've comfortably addressed. The conservation and the city prepared a criteria for the landslide assessment study that was prepared by Patterson. It was deemed to have been prepared according to that criteria and reviewed by both the Conservation Authority and municipal staff. So certainly we weren't obtuse to the importance of the landslide study, and we've met our obligations. In terms of transportation, obviously there was a transportation study. There was sensitivities to the location of the access. And if you go to one of the slides, I'm not sure which one it is, the entrance has been recessed to the below grade parking structure to provide a better throat length and enhance any potential safety. But the entrance to the building is located the furthest removed from the signalized intersection. There is going to be private amenity space located immediately at the intersection, which preserves for visibility and other considerations. In terms of parking, there's no on-street parking allowed on Dufour, and there's no potential for spillover parking into this community. It is quite removed from any local streets that would allow for any on-street parking. More importantly, it is part of a hub. It is located in proximity to a municipal LRT transit station at Place d'Orleans. It's also in proximity to employment, to retail, to restaurants, to gyms, and all of the amenities, including the Orleans Town Center. So the intent is certainly to reduce reliance on the automobile. In terms of transition, I think it's important to remember that this is a corridor as well. Corridors are intended to look different than low-rise communities. They are intended to accommodate mid and high-rise buildings, mixed-use buildings. They are supposed to look different. So it's not a reasonable consideration to say it's out of character with our low-rise community. It is intended to be different. Having said that, that doesn't mean that those corridors and development on them shouldn't be sensitive to that character and sensitive to that transition. The tower is about 60 meters away from the closest residential lot line up top in Queenswood Heights. There is a 5-story height difference between the lowest point of this site to to the homes on the north or south side to do for. We have a very prescriptive zoning schedule that had addressed issues of transition and building form and orientation of the tower and all of those things. So it is a very comfortable transition that's been rooted in your official plan policies and your design guidelines for high-rise buildings. I think I'll leave my comments to that. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Tamara?
Certainly. If we can skip to slide, let's see, 4. I just want to highlight that the current design has been refined with quite a bit of interaction with the UDRP comments. So we've made, I think Miguel alluded to this, we have made some revisions to the design aesthetics, the facade, the way the podium interacts with the streetscape. And it was a consistent comment we heard from the urban design review panel, which was that the landscaping, the building itself needs to have an improved interaction with Saint Joseph Boulevard. And when we do look to the Orleans corridor secondary plan, there is a full study of the entirety of Saint Joseph. What they want to see it as the ultimate design with cycle tracks, improved transit service, including bus lanes. So this redesign from the current submission, not even looking back to the 2017 submission, we've also seen revisions here responding to the future vision of Orleans corridor secondary plan and the way that the city of Ottawa has said they want to see this street transform and evolve. And in that way, I think the building, we can see how it has changed to respond to those comments, and looking forward to the future planned context on Saint Joseph Boulevard, which won't look very much like Saint Joseph Boulevard of today. So that's the last point I'd like to make. And thanks very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm checking to see if there are questions from any of the members, which there are not. So we will go back to questions of staff. I know Councillor Brockington had his hand up, but he stepped away from the table for a moment. Councillor Gower, if you want to continue.
I would like
Chair Gower.
Thank you, Chair. I would like staff to comment on the concerns about landslide risk, how that's been assessed, any context and information you can give in response to the concerns raised by delegates. Thank you.
Certainly, Chair. So the applicants submitted a couple studies. One was a slope stability analysis study, and another was a retrogressive landslide study. There was some back and forth between the Conservation Authority and the applicant to address some of the comments that the Conservation Authority had. In the end, the Conservation Authority accepted the findings, both based on post-construction and during construction, any concerns that were raised during that commenting period. Just want to add to the Conservation Authority are the experts in natural hazards and authorized by the province to identify these hazards. So we rely heavily on their opinion, and staff support what they accepted.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other further questions for staff. Is this item carried? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your work on that, Steve. Going to 70 and 80 Woodridge Crescent. There's an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. We have the applicants, we have a presentation, we have public delegations. So I will ask Ms. Baldwin, take us through the application and recommendation.
Good morning, members of committee. My name is Kimberly Baldwin, and I'm the file lead for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 70 and Woodridge Crescent. Next slide, please. The site is located on the south side of Woodridge, west of Bayshore Shopping Center, and within an area known as Acora Village. The site is approximately 8,900 square meters in size and is currently undeveloped. Immediately west of the site is an existing high-rise apartment building and the adjacent site to the east has obtained zoning approval for high-rise mixed-use development. Next slide, please. In the official plan, the site is designated hub within the outer urban transect. The official plan directs areas designated hub to develop into 15-minute neighborhoods with higher density housing, parks, and services. Hubs are also directed to provide enhanced mobility options to encourage transit use and active transportation in these areas. Next slide, please. The site is also situated within the Bayshore Protected Major Transit Station area, an area also known as a PMTSA. The site is also subject to an area-specific policy for Bayshore Shopping Center and a Cora Village community. The official plan calls for mixed-use, higher density development in these areas to support the city's rapid transit system. Next slide, please. This is an image of the current concept plan showing the proposed development consisting of 2 mixed-use high-rise buildings with publicly accessible open space and a series of active transportation connections throughout the site. Next slide, please. These are some perspectives of the current concept. The top left photo shows 2 towers of 37 and 40 stories, proposed to include approximately 580 units dispersed between 2 towers. The bottom right photo shows a concept plan of the minimum 1,500 square meters of publicly accessible open space proposed in the southeast section of the site. Next slide, please. This is a site plan showing a bit more detail of the envisioned setbacks proposed on site. To note just a couple, the 14-meter minimum setback to the Highway 417, as well as a 12.4-meter tower setback to the eastern property line. Next slide, please. Planning staff recommend that Planning and Housing Committee direct council to approve an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 70 and 80 Woodridge Crescent to permit the high-rise mixed-use development up to a maximum height of 40 stories with associated public realm improvements. The proposed development will add housing and services immediately adjacent to the Bayshore Rapid Transit Station and will also enhance public spaces and active transportation connections in a Cora Village. Next slide, please. So these are the details of the official plan amendment for the committee's benefit. So the proposed amendment to the official plan is to amend the area-specific policy 10 for a Cora Village to include a new policy for this subject property. And the requirements are, or the permissions are to permit taller buildings up to 40 stories and varying in height, and to permit a minimum lot coverage of 30%, and also to require the publicly accessible open space, as well as a multi-use pathway and public access easements to enhance connectivity through the area. Next slide, please. These are the details of the zoning bylaw amendment. So again, to permit high-rise mixed-use development up to 40 stories, a maximum of 2 towers on the site, to provide site-specific provisions related to setbacks, tower floor plates, balconies, bicycle parking, and loading zones. So just to note here, the amendment for the bicycle parking is actually to increase the required bicycle parking. The zoning bylaw requires 0.5 spaces per unit, and the proposed amendment requires 1 bicycle parking space per unit. And finally, the last element of the zoning bylaw amendment is to include a holding symbol that will require public realm improvements through the site plan control process. And those elements include a minimum 1,500 square meters of publicly accessible open space, a multi-use pathway along the south side of the property, as well as required public access from Woodridge Crescent connecting to the Bayshore Transit Station. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baldwin. We will move on to delegations. I'm wondering to the applicant team, did you want to speak to what you may have heard during public delegations, or do you want to take us through the presentation? I'm sorry, I missed that. After, thank you. So in that case, we're going to move to our public delegations, the first of whom is Marcel Lafontaine, who is online. Bear with us, colleagues.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'm Marcel Lafontaine and I'm with the Bayshore Community Association. And I have some concerns about the following. One of them is traffic, because at the moment, there are cars cutting through the parking lot behind the building at 25 Woodridge to get to the traffic lights so that they can bypass the traffic going to the Bayshore Mall. And the cars drive quickly, and it's dangerous for children that are traveling to the park or to school. And with more cars coming in, well, we can expect that there are going to be more that are going to be cutting through there. So the towers are supposed to be built near the future LRT stations to cut down on traffic so that tenants will be using the LRT instead of driving, but it shouldn't be adding to the traffic problem we already have here. Now, the solution would be to either provide no parking in the Fergus Lee Towers or to rent only to people who don't drive. Another one of my concerns is the overcrowding of the schools. We already have 500 children in Akora Village. The schools are full. Now, unless the buildings are designated adult only, there will be a lot of new children coming in, and they're going to have to be schooled in portables parked next to these schools. Now, the portables can be cold in winter and extremely hot in summer, and more teachers will need to be hired, and teachers don't like teaching in portables. Another of my concerns is that Fergus Lee must already provide services like maintenance and security to the existing buildings in Akora Village. With so many more tenants and units, their services could be affected. In the case of another long-lasting power failure, we've already had one, residents could be expected to fend for themselves, and walking down 30 or more flights of stairs to get out of the buildings could be difficult. These towers would not really provide affordable housing for seniors or families that can't afford a house, and the lack of rent control would make them even pricier over time. This ward has the highest number of seniors in Canada, and they need affordable housing. Now, the next topic is the community. I moved to Akora Village over 10 years ago because it was advertised as a community. People are friendly, and despite cultural and religious differences, everyone gets along. People get together for community bakes at the outdoor oven in our little park, as well as for kid-oriented events there. But when too many people move in, it's not a community anymore. It's like downtown. Everyone's struggling for a bit of green space and a bit of privacy. I see this as the death of the community. I may need to move again, and that is very discouraging. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. LaFontaine. Your Councillor Teresa Kavanaugh has some questions.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hi, Marcel. Thank you very much for taking the time to come out today. I know you're an active member of the Bayshore Community Association, and I appreciate you raising issues. I should let you know that schools are contacted and they are on the circulation for developments, so they have the opportunity to comment, and I'll check with staff on what their comments are when we get to staff. But I appreciate your concerns on traffic, and I know that that has been an issue, and we're working, this is over and above the development, on traffic calming, that long-awaited crossing at that would be right in front of that development. I want to make sure that comes in. So that's the pedestrian cross. So we'll continue to work on that. You were mentioning about power outages. Generally speaking, and we'll double check, most New buildings are putting in generators as backups. And
come on,
some
come
older
back.
buildings don't have them, but they generally do. So, I think it's an important point to raise. It's something I've raised because I'm checking on which buildings do have generators and which don't, because fire services wants to know that. But the new buildings are moving forward since it's becoming more and more an issue. And in terms of affordable housing, I agree with you that that's an important issue. Do you have any comments further to on the need for affordable housing in that community?
We do need more affordable housing. We have lots of families here and we have a lot of seniors, the most in Canada. They need affordable housing.
Yes, I agree with you. And thank you so much, Marcel, for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Troster has some questions for you as well.
Hi, Marcel. I was just wondering if you could explain the comment you made about if a tower came, it would no longer be a community like downtown.
Well, in the situation where you have a community, and we do have a community, if you have too many people living in the area and also trying to use our park, for instance, then that becomes a problem because you have so many strangers coming in, it just kind of breaks down the whole idea of community. And our park is small and we only have the one outdoor oven, which other people might think is really great to use too, but we have 500 children here too. So that's a lot of people.
Okay, well, I would suggest that new residents are not strangers. They are new neighbors. And speaking as the councillor that represents downtown Ottawa, I think I know my residents would take great offense at the assumption that we do not have thriving communities downtown, because we very much do. And the other thing I'll add is that the wonderful thing about more density and more neighbors is it brings more services to the community. And we've been so lucky in Centertown to welcome so many new neighbors. And if I have any message to my neighbors in the suburbs, is, I suggest you try opening your heart to the many more residents that need a home in our city. We need 400,000 new homes for our growing population, and new neighbors aren't strangers if you get to know them. And I hope that is a lesson that we can take from this, because we just approved.
Mr. Troster, do you have a question for the delegate?
No, I just really needed to say a few things about downtown communities. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'll have the opportunity, obviously, to wrap up our comments at the end of the debate. So I don't see any further questions for you, Ms. LaFontaine. We'll go to Kate Twiss, who is with the Crystal Beach Lakeview Community Association. And Ms. Twiss, no rush, but whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee, and we're in your hands.
There we go. Good morning. Crystal Beach Lakeview neighbors Bayshore, or Cora Village, and the two communities share amenities, roads, and natural features. The Crystal Beach Lakeview Community Association is pleased to have been able to participate in the two public consultations about this Fergus Lee project, as well as the meetings held for the adjoining project at 100 Bayshore by another developer, Ivanhoe Cambridge. We are also pleased to be able to speak today. I'm not here to try to stop the proposed towers. They're at a transit station. What we do want to do is draw your attention to our questions about future intensification in this area. And our questions are the following. What is the long-term plan to provide adequate parks and green space throughout Ottawa as it intensifies, especially in the outer urban transect? 2, are we paying attention to the official plan's Schedule 13, scenic routes? 3, are we confident in our technical decisions regarding A, geology, B, stormwater management, and C, transportation? 4, will we plan for future development around Carling and Bayshore, or just keep adding towers piecemeal? So 1, what is the plan for parks? Andrew Hayden Park is Bayshore's backyard. It was my backyard when I lived in Bayshore. The parking lot is already full on summer weekend evenings. People bring their own tables. Tables are what people want, and Fergus Lee is to be commended for adding tables and barbecues behind their recreation center. The city eventually needs a long-term plan, though, to address overuse of Andrew Hayden Park and the shortfall of parks that is going to occur throughout Ottawa as backyards evaporate. Is anybody brainstorming this? 2, are we paying attention to Schedule 13, scenic routes? The 70-80 Woodridge proposal says, the proposed development contributes to a cohesive silhouette comprised of a diversity of building heights in an area already characterized by tall buildings by providing 2 towers of varying height. The proposed development will have no visual impact from key vantage points identified on Schedule C6A. Unfortunately, Schedule C6A views, watersheds, and view sequences of the Parliament buildings and other national symbols is not relevant to development of this area, and there is no mention of the schedule that does matter, Schedule 13, scenic routes. CBLCA is afraid that the city and the NCC, and my community association for that matter, are dropping the ball on protecting the scenic entrance views into Ottawa from the west. Our stunning view from the Canada Hill has been severely damaged by the addition of light maintenance and storage facility and the clutter in the Wesley Clover Park. We should save what we can of the view. That view still struck my heart as I drove home over the crest of the Canada Hill on Canada Day. 3, are we confident in our technical decisions? Is the city getting the expertise it needs to make the best decisions about technical issues? I don't know. I can't evaluate the decisions. Is Planning and Housing Committee confident? On geology, Fergus Lee proposes to bury the parking garage at 70-80 Woodridge. If it is safe for Fergus Lee to bury its parking garage, why did we allow Ivanhoe Cambridge on the immediately adjacent property at 100 Bayshore Drive to convince us that geology required a 3-story concrete podium to wall the community off from the station? It is a far less satisfactory solution. The walkway through the 70-80 Bayshore green landscaping from the station to the community is an excellent idea. Did we have the right geological advice on 100 Bayshore? Are we getting the right geological advice on 70-80 Woodridge? On stormwater management, are we getting the right technical advice on stormwater management at both these properties? Are we confident that the pretty landscaping proposed for 70-80 Woodridge would be adequate to manage the stormwater? My community association can't evaluate it. We are trusting this committee and planning staff to ensure that the banks of Graham Creek and our backyards downstream from the 4 towers will not be ripped away by erosion, but we are anxious about it and hope you are confident. On transportation, we are also concerned that Bayshore Station, Holly Acres Road may have been left with inadequate space to act as a terminus for the baseline BRT. And that uneasiness leads us to suspect that planning may also be inadequate for the increased traffic that these 4 towers will bring to Woodridge Crescent and Bayshore Drive.
Kate,
Are you okay with
I'm
it?
sorry, I need to cut you off
Okay.
there. You're out of time. But there are some questions for you from Councillor Kavanaugh.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kate, for coming out today
Thanks,
and
Teresa.
representing your community association. I really appreciate it. A lot of your questions are related to the overall effect,
Yeah.
not specific to this. So it'll be hard, but I can ask some of the questions to staff regarding, you know, what has been done on the geotechnical. It is in the dev apps, but I'll just get them to specify what's been done. I know Graham Creek is a very sensitive issue. In fact, we've had staff from the city go out to properties there. I was on site there, and this is the engineering staff. So we get it, we're on it in that respect. It's not part of this development, but specifically, but the overall effect. It's, and I'm checking in on them, but it's just sort of the overall plans, because we just talked about water management very recently at another committee. So that's ongoing. And in terms of the scenic views, that's another question we cannot deal with directly in this file. We're just, it's kind of, I know it's piecemeal, but that's the way that we have to do things, one file at a time. But I have heard the concerns from the community on this. And in terms of our parks that are for our citywide parks, Andrew Hayden is a citywide park, just like Britannia Park, and they're both at capacity on a lovely day, and has certainly grown during the pandemic. We'll ask about the public space. There is a POP or privately owned park involved in this, so I just want to, but we'll check in on. So that is an extra in terms of this particular development. So appreciate that.
Councillor Cavan, do you have any questions for the delegate?
Yeah. What is your top concern in terms of this development specifically?
Will we be planning future development around Carling and Bayshore, or so going forward? Wikipedia says that Fergus Lee intends to put $40 million into Akora Village. Are we just going to continue to have this piecemeal ad hoc, toss a tower here, throw a tower there kind of development? Or are we going to, is Ottawa sense off on this intensification experiment? The real work of planning is just beginning, and there's going to need to be a lot of planning. And I think some of it should happen at Bayshore.
Thank you, Kate. I can't answer it, obviously, but certainly the applicants have heard from you of your concern, and I don't know if they have any particular plans at this moment, but it's heard loud and clear. Thanks so much.
The more I see of councillors, the more respect I have for you, and I know there's a tremendous amount of work, and I know I'm asking a lot to have more planning, but we're going to have to do it.
Appreciate you making the time. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Twist. I'm sorry I don't see any further questions for you. Thank you very much for your delegation today. Tyler, that's the end of our members of the public delegations. Unlike the last one, I'll actually give the applicants a chance to speak. Oh, you're so quiet. Just fired, eh? Just yeah, worst chair ever. I'm a hard ass. Either in your seat or else.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. We're in your hands.
Tyler did register to speak, and I am going to let him do the speaking, but I did want to come up in case I could assist with any answers to questions. So Brian Casagrande, partner with Foten Consultants. Tyler is here with us from Foten, and Richard Brisbane from BBB. We also have our client that's in attendance, including Dan Greenberg, the owner of Fergus Lee and Akora Village. But we expect we can answer most questions related to what they may be asked. Go ahead, Tyler.
Good morning. I don't know if the presentation is required. I believe Kim, city staff did a good job articulating and capturing the project, but given the delegations, I guess we can speak to those before getting to any of the questions you may have. So with regard to the studies such as traffic, of course, TIA was undertaken. The terms of reference are established by the city, of which our consultant followed and was approved by city staff after several rounds of review and didn't indicate any issues pertaining to traffic. We're anticipating around 0.6 parking ratio. However, that is in flux and perhaps maybe even less. Regarding stormwater management, which I know is a great issue of concern for surrounding communities, again, a study was undertaken by our civil engineering team, which would require all water to be kept on site. In addition to that, we should note that as seen in the site plan, the landscape plan provides at least at, or at a minimum of 1,500. However, that site plan you see right there, I believe provides about 1,800 square meters of permeable surface for infiltration of the stormwater. So in and above the stormwater management plan, this will provide even greater stormwater retention. Turning to school capacity, of course, I believe it was mentioned that the circulation goes to the school boards, and through those circulations, they at no point indicated that there were any issues with capacity pertaining to this particular development. And with regard to the scenic route of at the point that we started this process, I don't believe, or sorry, I guess I should go back to the original comment that was from a planning rationale that was undertaken through the old OP. The point the person mentioned was under a new official plan policy. However, this is something that we will continue to work with staff through the site plan process to evolve the design and make sure that it is compatible with any scenic route designations required. And beyond that, we can take any questions that, oh, sorry, Richard, you have anything you want to add?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee. Yeah, the only comment I wanted to make was relative to the earlier question about permeability and stormwater, and this site has been studied significantly, and there are bioswales, et cetera, for that. But my most important comment here, I think, is I'd ask you all to look at the site plan here. This is one of the rare occasions where we have a client who's actually concerned about urban design first, solving the connections with the community, about creating public realm, about creating public gardens, about providing space and gateway to their community. And I would suggest, and I know a little bit about the Confederation line, that this is a precedent-setting site for connectivity with a transit station, and a precedent-setting, meaning including the city's endeavors on that as well. So I think Fergus Lee and Danny Greenberg should be commended for what is, I think, a very, very strong example of what urban design and public realm can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see the first question from Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chair. Very much appreciate the application and answering most of the questions. One of the concerns was affordable housing. This is not something that has been decided yet, and it is something that is very much needed in the area, especially if we're right beside a transit station. And I wonder if you can commit. We have had a commitment from 100 Bayshore to have a number of units over 45. And if you're willing to commit to looking at affordable housing, especially larger family units.
Sure, thank you for the question. At this point, given that we are not approaching site plan and that development is not contemplated in the immediate to near future, while Fergus Lee, the client, is committed to affordable housing, given the delta between now and when development will actually take place, they can't commit to a particular amount of housing or CMHC or whatever affordable housing product is available to them. But at this point, they are committed to affordable housing and looking at multiple strategies.
Okay, but that's not very concrete. So are you willing to work with the city staff on affordable housing units?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure. In terms of the park space, it sort of, at one point it sounded like it was public, but it is privately owned public space?
That has yet to be determined. That again is more of a site plan issue. We, as part of the official plan amendment, we are committing to at minimum 1,500 square meters of parkland, whether that's through dedication, whether that's through a POPs, or a combination thereof, has yet to be determined. But as I said, we are looking to, in fact, exceed the OPA's requirement. So there will be a substantial investment in parkland, whether it's city-owned or Fergus Lee-owned.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. It is needed, as has been pointed out. If you're putting in so many people in this area, and it's the same issue in any intensified area, we're lucky to have the transit station, but people need some green space, and Bayshore Park is not that big. And frankly, needs updating and needs a splash pad, which we're hoping to put in. That's something that the neighborhood wants. In terms of commercial space, it's earmarked that it could be on the main floor. I hope that that's considered, because the one thing that concerns me about the Bayshore area is the dependence on Walmart as their grocery store. If Walmart ever gets up and leaves, that whole area is going to be a food desert. So the idea of having commercial on the first floor as an alternative to having places where people can get food of some kind, will you consider that? Because I think that's important, that it be a place where people can purchase what they need. It doesn't have to be a full-blown supermarket, though that would be perfect. But I think even just to give competition, it just is a bit precarious. And previous to Walmart moving in, there was nothing. We know that. It was kind of sad that we had to have school buses come in bringing fresh fruit to the area. Is that part of the plan?
Well, at this point, obviously, we can't commit to a specific use or grocery store or something of that nature. A market study will be undertaken at the time of development and site plan, but I would think that would be a great idea if the studies indicate that that's a necessary item. So, yes.
Okay,
Councillor, if I could just add, I mean, if I know anything about Dan Greenberg and this client, is that he wants to make sure his community is well served in whatever their needs are. So I think the careful consideration here is that you don't want to stipulate or require something or even promise something, because you know, I also see the opposite side of that spectrum every day when I drive by sites where through city policies and zoning, we were required to provide retail at grade, and then the quality of the retail is just constantly not there, not constantly, but often not there. And so, you know, my hope is that we can maintain flexibility to assess it properly at that point in time.
And I'm sure you'll have high quality, because you got the opportunity right now. So I see shaking heads. So that's good. No, I appreciate that. You've already covered off on some of the stormwater concerns, and I'll check with staff exactly on how that's going. But I have been in the neighborhood and with engineers on site, so of the places that are concerned. So we're on that. The schools, it is an opportunity to have more families. This is a very family-oriented neighborhood. As Marcel pointed out, we have a bake oven that, you know, that's been brought in. There's an opportunity for, you know, public realm spaces is really important. I hope that there's some possible connection with schools and that family units are being considered. Can I get like larger family units?
Yes, we will absolutely, of course, meet the OP's requirement of a minimum of 5%. However, the unit mix right now is in flux. As part of the proposal, we're contemplating between 500 and roughly 510 and 580 units, which is contingent on the size of the units. And that unit mix will be articulated more specifically at site plan. However, Fergus Lee is very, very much interested in providing family-sized units, whether it's in this building or within the Accor Village area more broadly.
Okay, you don't have to answer this question, but because it was raised, I'm going to just throw it out. Do you plan to do more developments, as was indicated in comments from a delegate?
I can only speak to this file. I'm not familiar with what Accor Village or Fergus Lee is looking into beyond this.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. But anyway, I'm just asking. No, appreciate it. It's been very positive to work and have the public meetings and to give people the opportunities to bring their comments in. I know traffic is an ongoing issue. I'd like to work with the with the property owner on putting in more traffic calming, because I'm already getting that request right now. With the two schools involved. So I hope to see more of that, such as a crosswalk in front of the buildings. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. I don't see any further questions for the applicant team. Thank you very much for the intervention today, which brings us to questions of staff. of which, oh, there we go. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chair. No, you've heard from the delegates about the concern about stormwater, and we have heard from the applicant that they're putting it on. But I just want to know what the overall city policy is on working on these large projects that are so close to our very delicate creek water systems.
So thank you, Chair. So through the site plan control process, there will be a detailed set of plans and studies that will be required and that need to meet the city standards and guidelines in terms of reference. So through that process, we're committed to ensuring that the proposed development meets those requirements and does consider the impact on adjacent properties as well as the city right of way, et cetera. So that site plan allows for that very comprehensive review at that time.
Thank you. In terms of the circulation to schools, was there any comment from the schools at all?
Through the circulation process, there were no concerns raised by any of the 4 school boards that we regularly circulate.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm that. One thing I forgot to ask the applicant was generators. It was raised that there was concern about power outages. Is it standard or will these developments have generators, backup generators, that is?
Chair, I can't answer that question. I will admit I'm not an expert on building code, so I don't know if it relates to that. But through that site plan process, our building code services team is circulated,
Yes.
as well as our utilities. So they will note any issues with utilities being provided in the area if necessary. And then, of course, I think the applicant has heard that request today, so we'll be sure that they can provide that information at the time of site plan control.
Thank you.
A quick note to that I'm getting some affirmation, I think, from the
Yes.
development team that they're looking
I
at
saw a
generators.
thumbs up from the applicants. Team. Thank you. Public realm space. I just want to know the oversight the city has on that. I think that's really important. It was mentioned how that helps build community, and how much oversight does the city give on that? And obviously, we're still working it out, whether it's going to be a handover to the city of park space or if it's going to be privately owned public space.
I think, sorry, Chair, when the site plan control application comes in, there'll be that comprehensive review process. At that time, depending on how that public space is allocated, whether it is to be city parkland dedicated to the city or a POP space, will determine what that process is. As a city park, it will go through a comprehensive design process that will involve consultation. As a privately owned public space, there are guidelines, design guidelines for POPs. But I think we've also heard today that it is really important to the community. So, we would endeavor the applicant to work very closely with the community and with our parks team for any input. So, as we move forward, we'll be able to better define what that process will be.
I raised the issue of affordable housing with the applicant. Will we continue to push for more affordable housing units in large developments like this near transit?
Yes, absolutely. So, as part of our official plan and the goal for the city, that is, a goal for us. So we will continue to work with them, of course, and involve our housing services staff as the application moves forward.
I appreciate that, since we have equivalent with 100 Bayshore right next door. So that would be great. I think we've got all the concerns raised. Thank you.
Really just a quick question. When school boards are consulted, I think I just heard that they aren't sure yet how many 3 bedrooms, how many 2 bedrooms. Like, school boards are consulted without really having any idea of how it's all gonna end up. Is that not true?
So Chair, through the site plan control process, the dwelling units are typically more refined. Of course, at building code, there may be some movement of that dwelling unit count so long as it meets zoning. But all the school boards are circulated and they do have that opportunity to submit comments. So they do have a general idea, and we do see that school boards who do have issues with overcrowding or capacity, they will request that notices be put on title so that, they've documented the fact that there might be issues with, with accommodating those students. So I would say that through the site plan, the number is not far off enough that it would make an impact. So they do have a good idea of what those dwelling counts are.
But they really just comment and say, oh, well, yeah, we may have overcrowding, and then basically, does that have any impact on anything?
I can't, so Chair, I can't speak for the school board. But as I said, if it is a serious enough issue with overcrowding, they will request the notices on title so that people are notified that if they do purchase or lease in an area, that there is potential that their child may not be able to be accommodated in the near school and may have to travel to a different school.
Interesting. So that's the only impact. You know, it's not as if that a school board's comment would actually stop the development or change the development or say, oh, well, we want different types of units. They just tell the people who are going to be living there, you know, guess what? Your child may be bussed out of this neighborhood. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Chair, there are two reasons that the school boards are circulated. One of them is for them to provide comment or, you know, influence the development application itself. The other is for their awareness so that they can take that into account as they do their planning on their side of things to look and look forward on within their own school system and their infrastructure to see how they're going to accommodate future students. So there really is a two-faceted fold to that circulation. One is for them to give us information, but the other is for them to receive it and incorporate it into their own planning.
Thanks for that. And I mean, also they could make comments about if there's going to be school buses, additional school buses that will have to come in, they could talk about traffic, but it's just fascinating to see how little impact the school board would have. It's mostly for them to determine how they have to manage their world, not to stop a development or change a development really and truly, you know? Anyway, thanks.
Well raised and said, Councillor Curry. I don't see any further questions for our city staff. Thank you very much for your work on this one, Kimberly. Is that item carried? Carried. Excellent. Before we move on to the next item, that was our development approvals. Mr. Moody, what's the box score on how many units this committee approved today?
I don't have
if
the
everything
exact,
was built.
We are over 2,000, Chair.
Over 2,000. Be great to see some shovels in the ground. Next item, Mr. Fu. Annual development report and official plan baseline report, in which some stats are going to move from the ADR to the OPBR. We have to get the official plan baseline report down to a 3-word title. I'm sorry, we're just like yammering amongst ourselves, and staff are like, we need to present and get out of here. We got work to do, Chair. We are in your hands.
Thank you, Chair. So we have a double header here with 2 items, 4.6, 4.7, official plan monitoring, and we'll just flow into the 2022 annual development report. With me is Maddie Herman Fernandez, planner in research and forecasting, the author of both reports, and she'll be pleased to take us through a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of committee, or almost afternoon. I will briefly go over the official plan monitoring 2022 draft baseline report and the supplemental 2022 annual development report. So I'll start by going over the official plan 2022 draft baseline report. So to provide some background on the report, the official plan provides direction to continually monitor the effectiveness of the plan's policies to determine if the city is on track to meet its strategic directions and objectives. The official plan monitoring report is therefore a new information report following the adoption of the current official plan, and this first report is to establish a baseline of currently available data indicators that can be measured over time to assess policy performance, and will serve as a draft for further consultation with external stakeholders. Next slide, please. So the report is structured by the 5 big policy moves within the official plan, which are growth management, economic development, mobility, urban and community design, and climate, energy, and public health. Its reporting period is from 2018 to 2022, with certain growth management indicators measured mid-year to mid-year from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2022. This is to allow for direct comparison with official plan projections, which are also mid-year. 19 data indicators were included within the report based on if they could measure specific official plan policies policy or policies, had data readily available and could be tracked over time. Of these indicators, there are two different types, which are target indicators, which can be measured against a specific official plan target. So an example of this would be 40% urban forest canopy, and trend indicators, which measure trends over time towards official plan goals and objectives. So an example would be a reduction in accidents that results in fatality or major injury. So each of these data indicators has its own page under the most relevant big policy move within the report. Next slide, please. Performance report of these data indicators is also included at the beginning of the report to quickly summarize indicator status and progress made towards official plan targets and objectives. It also includes dates. Data was last updated since some data sources are updated less frequently than others. Performance is measured based on whether an indicator is meeting or exceeding official plan targets and objectives, is making progress but not yet meeting targets or objectives, is making little to no progress, and in cases where not enough information is available at this time, performance can be assessed within this report, and this was often the case when only baseline data could be established. Next slide, please. So of the 19 indicators tracked, 8 are meeting or exceeding official plan targets and objectives. 6 are showing progress but are not yet meeting targets. 1 shows no or minimal progress, and 4 do not currently have enough information to assess performance towards official plan targets or objectives at this time. Overall, the official plan is performing well when it comes to economic development and mobility indicators, as well as aspects of growth management related to intensification and land supply. Indicators show that the city could improve in achieving climate, energy, and public health goals when it comes to our urban tree canopy and greenhouse gas emissions, as well as other growth management policy objectives related to providing adequate and affordable housing. Next slide, please. So the report recommendation is that committee receive the report for information. Next steps that staff will take following receipt of the report include continuously reviewing and modifying the report based on the availability of data and resources allocated for official plan monitoring. Current data indicators may be refined and new indicators may be added as additional data becomes available. There are also other policies, goals, and objectives within the official plan that are measurable but do not currently have data available to measure, or would be too difficult to measure with resources currently available. So in these cases, staff are working towards tracking the information, exploring potential new data indicators or methods of retrieving data. Staff will also review indicators to identify what improvements can be made to advance policy goals and over time inform future official plan policy review. So this report is also a draft for consultation with external stakeholders, such as the Federation of Citizens Associations of Ottawa, or the FCA, the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association, or GOBA, and post-secondary institutions. This is in order to receive feedback on the report and potentially identify additional sources of data for monitoring. And this is all in preparation for the 2023 update of the official plan monitoring report, which is scheduled for later this year. And the intent is to continue to update the report on an annual basis. So in addition to the report, a motion at joint committee in October 2021 directed staff to investigate the cost, feasibility, and staff resources to develop an accessible, easy to use, publicly available tracking tool on ottawa.ca that provides transparency regarding the city's performance in achieving the goals set out in the official plan as part of official plan monitoring. So staff intend to create an interactive version of the performance report table we just went through on ottawa.ca, where each indicator will include a link to the relevant page within the report should the user want to find out more information. And this tool can be developed and posted on ottawa.ca with existing resources. So So the other report that is being submitted to committee today is the 2022 Annual Development Report, which is now supplemental to the official plan monitoring report. Growth management aspects of the previous and current official plan used to be monitored through the Annual Development Report, as well as other land surveys. Staff have since revised the 2022 version of the Annual Development Report to be supplemental to the new official plan monitoring report. The Annual Development Report will continue to provide updates on other development and economic data indicators for Ottawa and the regional market area that are not directly related to official plan policies and objectives, but instead provide additional context regarding demographic and economic changes. So the 2023 update of the Annual Development Report will also be available later this year. And the report recommendation for today is that staff receive the report for information. So just to go over a few highlights of the 2022 Annual Development Report. Net migration to the Ottawa-Gatineau area increased 160% between 2021 to 2022. Housing starts were up 7.2% from 2021 with 10,077 new starts, the majority of which were apartments. Next slide, please. So regarding employment, most employment clusters experienced growth in 2022, with the exception of office and government clusters, which lost 2,800 and 600 jobs respectively. The knowledge cluster remained the largest employment cluster with 190,300 employed in 2022. Ottawa's office vacancy rate increased from 9.7% to 11.2% from 2021 to 2022. This is following the pandemic and the rise in remote work. Next slide, please. So just to quickly summarize the findings of the two reports, the official plan is performing well in terms of economic development and mobility indicators, as well as aspects of growth management related to intensification and land supply. Areas that we can improve include achieving climate, energy, and public health goals, as well as other growth management policy objectives related to providing adequate and affordable housing options. Through the Annual Development Report, we saw increases to net migration and housing starts between 2021 to 2022. Most employment clusters experienced growth in 2022, while office vacancy rates increased. And the 2023 updates for both reports are scheduled for later this year in order to catch up. And that concludes the presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Teach me to step away from my chair. There are no public delegations on this. We'll go straight to Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just a couple clarifying questions. Do we understand from your report that the growth that we're seeing in the city of Ottawa is outpacing the projections that we had anticipated in our official plan?
So, Mr. Chair, when we started the official plan, that was around 2018, 2019, and the projection period started the year 2018. That was the best information available at the time and went on 25 years to 2046. The official plan was technically adopted and approved in 2021. So the official plan itself has a starting period of only 2021. If we were to look back though, from the growth projections it was based on in 2018, we've seen about just under 36,000 housing starts over the 4 years from 2018 to 2022. And the projections were just under 34,000. So it's a difference of about 2,000 or about 500 per year.
Thank you for that. And in terms of population growth, are we, I know that you're in the same department, it's not directly related, but are we seeing that the population is growing at the pace that we could have anticipated back then? Or is it exceeding or falling behind?
So our population estimates are currently tracking below population projections from the official plan. But we do expect that they may ramp up following the migration patterns from or following the pandemic. So since this report is from 2022.
Okay, thank you. I find that to be an interesting way that we can follow through as we continue to monitor this. When it comes to the office vacancy rates and that growing number, I'm going to assume that that interacts in the way that we look at our available land for business parks and other necessary projections. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, in terms of the business parks and the land supply, that's largely predicated on industrial and warehousing type activities, less so on the office components. So the office plays a smaller role in our land need. Again, most of the land need for the non-residential is really on the industrial and logistics type of activities.
Okay, I'm always interested in understanding better how we can encourage some of our business parks to look at their land use planning differently. And certainly in College Ward, the road that starts with W that runs from Clyde. Woodward, thank you so much. Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Woodward could certainly see some healthy density there. I'll leave it there and let someone else jump on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So not to be mean, but you know the section climate, energy and public health. So the section on greenhouse gas emissions, it says the data was updated in 2021. Greenhouse gas emissions are down 15% from 2012 levels and making progress towards a 2025 target of 43%. I guess I don't believe that. So I guess I will say that straight out. And I would ask, how is this being measured, the greenhouse gas emissions? What's included in that? Because one of our comments, and we said this in the briefing, is that our data is not great. So I just was wondering if someone could explain what data was collected to get that figure, that percentage, and what exactly are you measuring?
So unfortunately, the climate change staff couldn't be present for the meeting today, but I can follow up with them in order to provide a better response to that question. I know that they are currently undergoing a review of the results from 2021, and they do, I think, anticipate that we're not quite meeting the targets as previously reported.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we're not. But I just even wonder if 15% is accurate at all. From 2012, I mean, I wonder, you think about how much greenhouse gas is emitted from concrete. The production of concrete is like one of the highest ones, and think how many buildings are being built, including what we're doing, right? And is that even being measured? I just think it's kind of a false thing for us to say, oh, it's being reduced by 15% if it's not including very many things. Like, is it simply just cars on the road? Like, that's not the full story, that's what I'm saying. So, but anyways, yeah, if you can get a more fulsome answer, that'd be helpful. But I would question whether that's helpful data to have in there. Honestly, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying, like, in terms of us producing something like this is a performance report. We're measuring how things are going, and yet the data is not really in that category. I don't think that helpful, but anyway, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up, I know that with the pandemic that we did see a decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. So it could be that, the results that we did see might not be sustained now that things have returned to the new normal. But yes, I will respond with a more fulsome response from the climate change team.
I think that's well raised, Councillor Curry. We're just receiving the report for information today, but at some point, councillors may want to consider giving some direction as to what goes in that report or doesn't go in that report. Best not to do that on the fly, maybe today, but well raised. Who's next? Vice Chair Gower.
Thank you, Chair. On the affordable housing line in the report, it says data reported incomplete as private affordable housing not currently tracked. Can you explain what that means and what you're intending to collect in future versions of the report?
So, Mr. Chair, in terms of the affordable housing target, that is the target for all of the housing so we have a significant amount of housing starts that come from the private sector. And then we also have nonprofits that our affordable housing group partners with. In terms of that private sector, we don't have the pricing data available to enable to determine what percentage of starts in a year are under that affordable threshold. That has been a big gap. That's been a gap that the city has had and many municipalities have had over the past few years. And we're trying to find some ways to close that gap through perhaps some proxies, maybe some average pricing data. We're looking for other avenues to see if there's any other sources out there. And that's one of the items for consultation we're hoping to engage with to see if there's any other information that we can find.
Okay. Did you have something to add, Lauren?
Chair, I think I could add also that in the future, there is legislation that has come into place now where if a private developer wishes to have their development charges waived on affordable units, they would enter into an agreement with the city to deliver those units, and we'd be able to track private market affordable housing in that way going forward.
Okay,
yeah,
that's good. On mobility, there's a very specific goal in the official plan, or the 5 big moves, that half of all trips should be by sustainable modes by 2046. But I don't see a line reflective of that. Will it be, or should it be, or is there a reason it's not?
So through you, Mr. Chair. We spoke with the transportation team, and the origin destination data, which includes mode share information, wasn't ready to be published at the time of this report. We're hoping maybe for the next report or the one after that. We had also looked into possibly including mode share data from the census, but we had some reservations since the data was collected during the pandemic, and so it wasn't maybe the most accurate to include within the report. So we're hoping that for the following reports, we will include mode share information in order to measure that policy.
Okay, that's good. And my last question is, we've got a lot of good regular reports we get. This is a new one. There's the development report we're going to receive today. There's the economic development. I think we got a finance yesterday. Are these all going to live together somewhere on the website? So I think as a collection, they're really great, but you have to go to a lot of different places online now to find them.
Mr. Chair, we can certainly take a look to see how we could better organize the reports together on ottawa.ca.
Housing pipeline, that was the other one I wanted to mention too. They're all related and linked, and yeah, it'd be great if there's a one portal on the website that these could all live on. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. I don't want to lose sight of that one. I'm wondering if staff would be willing to undertake that as direction.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation yesterday and giving us a heads up on all this. We need a baseline. We need to know where we're starting from, and so we know where we're going forward. I was wondering about vacant properties, and we have the vacant unit tax, and so it helps us track on that. But what about vacant properties? We have a charge for vacant properties, but it's obviously not very effective because there's so many vacant properties. So is this something we can look at in the future? I mean, clearly we need to track this. I just want your comments because I see this as a big concern.
So Chair, we could look at that. The issue with vacant properties is that some of the properties might be vacant for a short period of time while they are preparing to develop. So one of the reports this committee receives is the Greenfield Residential Land Survey that basically reports thousands of hectares of technically vacant properties because they were going through the development process in order to start grading and have those building permits. So one of the difficulties staff may have would be to determine which properties are in the pipeline, so to speak, for development and which properties are not.
I don't know about other wards, but it's years and years and years, sometimes decades of seeing vacant properties. So I'm not talking about something where we're putting aside the demolition report, but I'm talking about things that are just left vacant. Sometimes they're lots in a community, and sometimes some things happen, but they've just been left vacant. And I don't know how we're tracking it. And almost all of them are potential for residents, even if they were not formally for residents. But because they may have been brownfields, for example. But is there a way we can track that? Because like I said, we have the vacant unit tax, so we're very much on that, but not vacant properties. And the charge we put is pretty minimal. There's some really long-term stuff out there. So that we're losing out on. I'm seeing it all over the place. And a lot of it is in bad shape too. Is that something we can consider as a staff direction to look at?
Yeah, Chair, staff could take that direction to look at and perhaps come back with a report on if there are any issues with that particular indicator.
I'd appreciate it. I think that's something, a missed opportunity. In terms of the active transportation network, appreciate that we're focusing on that under mobility. And we did raise the concern about like the winter cycling network and its growth. And can we keep track of as we grow that network?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's the intent, is to continue to follow up with the active transportation and road services team in order to continue tracking growth or kilometers of growth of the winter cycling network.
Thank you. We just went through a few development files, and the thing that keeps coming up is green space parks. So I think that will be something that we'll need to keep track of. It talks about it, the downtown core being an issue, but as development reaches out to a place like Bay Ward, we just saw, we're going to have more people living in tight spaces with less green space. How are we tracking that?
So through you, Chair, it's currently being tracked through the Parks and Facilities Master Plan. We're currently seeing that we're below parkland to resident ratios in the downtown core and inner urban transects. And we will continue to provide updates through updates to the Parks and Facilities Master Plan.
Thank you. It's kind of funny because Bayshore is listed as an outer urban transit, which doesn't really fit when you think about what's about to happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I'll make it quick. So this is the baseline report. We're going to be seeing subsequent reports whereby we measure for progress on these individual items. My question really becomes about, and we did talk about this during the briefing, but for those indicators for which you have no data yet, you're looking for a proxy or you're looking for a data set that you don't yet have. How are you going to determine whether or not, like if you can't find it yet, how are you going to decide that that data set is going to measure adequately the indicator that you've identified in the OP? And if it doesn't, do you then come back to committee and ask to revise the way that that indicator is worded? I don't see how that's possible considering it's connected to the OP, but I don't want to see us shoehorning improper data sets to measure something as important as this. So we want that to be, you know, the cleanest correspondence. How will you resolve for that? And how will committee be involved in helping to determine what the right course of action is for that?
So Chair, if staff is able to find a set that currently is absent in this baseline report, one of the first criteria would be the 3 criteria we set out for as an indicator. One of them is the data has to be available. if the data is not available, then we can't put it in the report, and we would make some comments or some remarks in the next report to this committee so that this committee is aware that their gap remains, and what staff are doing about that to see if that could be reported on in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I don't see any further questions on these two items. So are items 4.6 and 4.7 carried? Received. Sorry, received. What's next? That is our substantial agenda. Wait till you hear when the next meeting is. Longer meetings today will seem worth it. I don't believe we have any in-camera items. Are there any notices of motion? Nope. Any inquiries? I know Councillor Johnson has one. And Teresa, okay. Okay. Was that the one that you previously gave? Okay, don't worry about it. Yeah. So inquiries, Councillor Johnson?
In 2001, City Council adopted a new public notification and consultation strategy that outlines how residents of Ottawa, including community organizations, are to be notified regarding development proposal and applications. Community organizations can register to be notified, but individuals cannot. This public notification system is manually maintained by planning staff. With over 200 community organizations registered in the system, almost every circulation notice reveals that some community organization has changed or become defunct. This requires staff time to confirm if the organization still exists, and if so, manually updating the contact information. This is an inefficient use of staff time and could lead to organizations missing notifications. Given that development consultation processes with communities has been negatively impacted by recent provincial legislation, enhancing our automatic notification systems may allow for residents to be better informed about potential developments and may save staff time, resulting in improved working relationships between residents, developers, and the city. Question number 1. What work has been done to enable community organizations to create LMS accounts, register for the notification system, including uploading documentation, setting their organization's preferences, and managing their contact information? Number 2, have changes on the website been implemented to reflect the 2022 changes to community organizations requirement for a minimum of 10 members? Number 3, what steps have staff taken to improve the filtering and search functionality of the existing dev apps? Number 4, have staff explored including enhanced application information in existing dev apps, such as file status and regulatory meeting dates? And number 5, have staff considered allowing individuals to register, and if not, why? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to the reply to that. We have no other, are there any other inquiries? No. We have no other business. We are adjourned. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, August 28th. 2024. Colleagues, thank you.
Happy summer, everybody.
Happy summer, Ariel.
Good laugh.